My wife filed for divorce after she found out that I was a dollar millionaire in order to take my fortune, but she didn't know that she would be unlucky. If someone had told me 5 years ago that love and money would end up on opposite sides of a courtroom, I probably would have laughed. Not because I thought I was immune to it, but because I thought I was smarter than that. Turns out, smarts don't mean much when you're blinded by what you want to believe. My name is Mark Davis, and for most of my adult life, I kept a low profile by choice. No flashy cars, no designer clothes, and definitely no social media flexing. I lived in a modest 2-bedroom home just outside of Charleston, South Carolina. My wealth wasn't inherited, it was built. Quietly. I ran a consulting firm remotely, made smart early investments in a few startups, and diversified into real estate and tech. I like being the guy no one suspected of being wealthy. When I met Dana Walker, I was already in my late 30s. She was a few years younger, stunning, sharp, and full of charisma. We met in a bookstore downtown. She was standing in the fiction aisle, holding Wuthering Heights, looking puzzled. "That one ends badly," I said with a grin. "Beautifully, but badly." She laughed and looked at me. "Thanks for the spoiler. Call it a public service." That was the start of everything. We got coffee the same day. Had dinner 3 nights later. By the second week, we were spending most of our evenings together. Dana was funny and warm, and she made everything feel fresh. She talked about wanting a simple life. She worked in marketing, hated office politics, and said she wanted a family someday. I kept my wealth to myself, not because I was playing a game, but because I wanted something real. I'd seen what money did to relationships. We dated for just over a year before we got married. Small wedding, close friends, no prenup. That's a detail I think about more than I'd like to admit now. But back then? It felt like trust. Like love. Dana never asked about my bank accounts or how I afforded a house with no mortgage. She was content, or so I thought. Year 1 of marriage was fine. Stable. Comfortable. We took weekend trips, split dinner bills, and occasionally dreamed out loud about the future. Kids, maybe. A better car. A bigger place if things took off with my business. But everything changed one night in our second year. I'd been reviewing some tax documents and left one of the files open on my laptop. Nothing too dramatic, just a breakdown of earnings, holdings, some projected income streams from a few properties I own through shell companies. I was in the kitchen, stirring sauce, when Dana walked into the office. She didn't call out. Didn't ask what I was working on. When I walked in 5 minutes later, she was still staring at the screen. Her face was blank. Too blank. "You okay?" I asked. She snapped the laptop shut and smiled. "Yeah, just looking for Spotify." But things weren't the same after that. She started asking subtle questions. About my consulting work, about who my clients were, whether I'd ever thought about retiring early. She took sudden interest in finances, joint accounts, shared credit cards, long-term planning. And then, out of nowhere, it happened. A letter. Delivered by a courier. It was from a divorce lawyer. Dana Walker had filed for divorce. No warning. No fight. No tears. Just a perfectly orchestrated legal move. I sat at the dining table for nearly an hour, reading the same paragraph over and over. She wasn't just leaving me. She was coming for half of everything. What she didn't realize was that I'd prepared for this possibility. Maybe not because I expected it from her, but because I'd seen enough broken partnerships to know how fast affection can curdle into entitlement. What Dana saw on that screen wasn't even the full picture. She didn't know about the legal structures. The offshore holdings. The way everything had been positioned to appear smaller than it was on purpose. She thought she'd found the pot of gold. What she found was a decoy chest, locked tight. I picked up my phone and called Daniel Alvarez, my longtime attorney. "It's time," I told him. He didn't ask for details. "I'll get started," he said. And just like that, the game began. The morning after I received the divorce notice from Dana's attorney, I sat at my kitchen counter, black coffee in one hand, and a yellow legal pad in the other. I didn't feel angry yet. Mostly, I felt stupid. Stupid for letting her believe I was just an average middle-class guy. Stupid for not seeing the patterns in time. And stupid for not insisting on a prenup, even if it felt cynical. I hadn't heard from Dana since the letter. No phone call. No explanation. Not even a "sorry, this is how it has to be." She'd made her move and gone silent. Probably on the advice of her lawyer, or maybe because she thought silence gave her more power. What she didn't realize was that I'd already begun protecting myself long before we ever said I do. When I first started making serious money, back when I was 29 and naive, I hired Daniel Alvarez, a sharp, strategic attorney who specialized in asset protection. I told him exactly what I wanted: anonymity, separation between my personal and financial identities, and legal armor in case I ever got married without a prenup. It wasn't about paranoia. It was about planning. Daniel helped me set up a web of LLCs, trusts, and asset holding companies. None of my wealth was in my name. My main home was technically owned by a trust, and my consulting business, though run by me, was a client of another holding company. On paper, I had a modest income. Comfortable, but nothing a divorce court would salivate over. Dana, it seemed, had only scratched the surface when she peeked at that tax document. And now, she was trying to cash in on an illusion. I met with Daniel in person 3 days after the letter arrived. He was in his usual office in downtown Charleston, the same one he'd had since his early 30s. Same mahogany desk, same framed law degree behind him. He flipped through the divorce notice with the calm detachment of a surgeon reviewing an X-ray. "She's not being subtle," he said. "This reads like she's expecting to walk out with a condo and a Porsche." "She thinks I'm a millionaire," I said flatly. Daniel looked at me over the rim of his glasses. "You are a millionaire. Just not the kind she has access to." She saw one tax file. I must have left the wrong tab open. "She saw what you let her see," he corrected. "She doesn't know about the trusts. The offshore holdings. The real stuff." "And she won't," I said. "I want this done quietly, cleanly, and legally." Daniel nodded. "We'll respond with full transparency. Just our version of it. We'll disclose the assets in your name, the ones she already suspects exist. Let her legal team chew on that." I exhaled. I feel like I'm at war with a woman I used to love. Daniel shrugged. That's what marriage becomes when greed takes over. The weeks that followed were a bizarre dance of silence and posturing. Dana moved out, but not far. She rented a downtown apartment, furnished in a modern, sterile style that looked like it had been plucked from an influencer's Instagram feed. I saw the photos. Her profile went public again, complete with solo shots captioned "New Beginnings" and "Time to Invest in Me." Our mutual friends didn't know what to say. Some reached out awkwardly, others stayed silent. A few quietly unfollowed me on social media. I didn't blame them. People pick sides, especially when they don't know the whole story. Dana's attorney, a polished shark named Riley Thompson, submitted an initial request for spousal support and asset division that almost made me laugh. They listed our home, technically not my home, as a shared marital asset, and estimated my annual income at over $700,000. Daniel responded with a modest list of assets: a single checking account with $14,000, a business account with irregular income, and a leased car. Everything technically accurate. Everything technically legal. That was when the tone shifted. Dana finally texted me. "Dana, is this some kind of game?" I stared at the message for a long time. Then I typed back. "Me, no. Just facts." "Dana, you lied to me." "Me, never. I just didn't advertise." "There's a difference." She didn't reply. A few nights later, I ran into Jake, a mutual friend of ours, at a bar. He was nursing a beer, and I hadn't expected him to speak to me. "Can I be honest with you?" he said. "Sure." "She's telling people you scammed her. That you manipulated her into marrying you so you could hide your money." I laughed, more out of disbelief than humor. "Scammed her? I didn't even buy myself new shoes for the wedding." Jake shrugged. "People hear what they want. You know how it is." "Yeah." I knew exactly how it was. But rumors don't worry me. Paperwork does. And my paperwork was airtight. Daniel sent me an email the next morning with the subject line, "Discovery Response, Stage 2. Inside were documents verifying that my consulting income was tied up in operating costs, that I drew only a modest salary, and that all the luxury assets she assumed existed simply weren't available for division. Because legally, they weren't mine. We were playing by the book. Just not the one she expected. 3 weeks after Dana filed, the first cracks began to show, not in my case, but in hers. Daniel forwarded me an email chain between her attorney and ours. It was short, clipped, but the tone was impossible to miss.
From Riley Thompson. We request additional financial disclosures.
The initial documents submitted do not align with known lifestyle indicators observed by our client during the marriage.
Translation: Dana couldn't believe I wasn't as rich on paper as she thought.
Because to her, expensive meant obvious cars, watches, penthouses.
But I'd never lived that way. I didn't need to.
My real wealth was locked away behind legal walls, and she had walked right into them.
Daniel responded with a neutral tone.
Mr. Davis has submitted all legally required disclosures. Should your client believe otherwise, she may provide formal evidence through the court process.
They didn't. Because there wasn't any. That's when Dana started showing up in places she didn't belong.
I saw her across the street from my house one morning, pretending to jog. Later that week, she messaged one of my assistants through LinkedIn, asking general questions about Mark's business.
Subtle, but not subtle enough. I didn't respond. I didn't escalate. I just documented everything.
Because now, it wasn't about heartbreak.
It was about strategy. I wasn't alone in this.
Daniel recommended I meet with a forensic accountant named Elaine Carter, mid-50s, eagle-eyed, known for testifying in high-net-worth divorces. I met her at her office on a rainy Thursday.
You did something smart, she said, flipping through my file. You didn't try to hide assets. You structured your financial identity in a way that keeps things separate. It's not illegal. It's strategic. I just didn't want to be a walking target. She nodded. Most people come to me too late.
You did it before she ever knew there was a vault to try to break into.
What do you think she'll do next? I asked. Elaine smiled tightly. She'll try to find cracks. Accuse you of deception. Maybe even claim you used coercion or fraud to keep her in the dark. Would that work? Only if you'd promised her something specific in writing. Verbal assumptions don't count. And I hadn't promised her a cent. Not once. If anything, I'd played down what little I showed her.
She expected to marry a goose and start collecting golden eggs, Elaine said.
Now she's realizing she just cracked an empty shell.
I thanked her, left the office, and drove home slowly, the windshield wipers ticking like a metronome. That weekend, I ran into Sarah, a former co-worker of Dana's, at the grocery store.
We hadn't spoken in months. Hey, she said. Can I just say you look more relaxed than I thought you'd be?
I get that a lot, I said with a small smile.
She leaned in. Dana's been talking.
Says you betrayed her.
Hid your fortune.
Left her with nothing.
I raised an eyebrow. Funny, I thought she was the one who filed.
Yeah, but that's not how she tells it.
Says you were emotionally unavailable. Secretive. I nodded slowly. Did she mention how she tried to clean me out before asking for a single conversation? Sarah's face fell. No. Not that part. Didn't think so. I wasn't trying to win anyone over. But I wanted the truth to sit in the air like fog, quiet and undeniable.
Then came the financial demand. Dana's attorney submitted a formal request for $250,000 in spousal compensation, citing accustomed lifestyle and potential hidden earnings.
The language was flowery. The math was fiction.
Daniel and I responded with a calm rejection, citing lack of evidence and the clear paper trail of all legally reported income. We attached a motion to dismiss any future spousal support unless new, verifiable information came to light.
Within 48 hours, I got a message from Dana. Dana, you're really going to let this get ugly? Me, it already is. I just didn't start it. Dana, you're punishing me. Me, no. I'm just not paying you to walk away with a story you made up. She didn't reply.
Then, the unexpected happened. One of Dana's old exes, Ben Langley, someone she dated before we met, reached out to me. I didn't know the guy, but he sent me a message through LinkedIn.
Just one line.
You're not the first she's tried this with.
At first, I ignored it.
But he sent another.
2 years ago, same thing. Different target. Divorce, lawsuit, attempt to take the house. I have paperwork.
I called Daniel, and within a day, we had records confirming Ben's story.
Dana had been married once before, for 18 months.
Filed for divorce, claimed domestic instability, and attempted to seize community property. She lost that case due to insufficient evidence.
She had a pattern.
And this time, she had miscalculated her mark.
By the time April rolled around, I could feel the tide turning.
Not because Dana was backing down, but because the cracks in her plan were now becoming chasms. Daniel scheduled a preliminary court date for asset review and spousal support hearing. Nothing official would be decided yet, but both parties would be under scrutiny. I expected Dana to show up in some version of a carefully curated persona, polished, sympathetic, perhaps even tearful. She did one better. She arrived in designer heels, a luxury bag slung over her shoulder, and a fake modest smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. Mr. Davis, her lawyer, greeted me coldly in the hallway.
Mr. Thompson, Daniel nodded back. Dana looked me up and down, almost disappointed I hadn't shown up looking wrecked. I'd worn a navy suit and a quiet confidence. It wasn't armor. It was the truth.
I wasn't playing defense anymore, I was simply watching her collapse under the weight of her own ambition.
Inside the courtroom, things got interesting fast. Daniel presented my legally verified income and assets again.
Everything matched the original filing: modest consulting revenue, standard operating expenses, a modest checking account balance, and no shared properties. Then Riley Thompson made a mistake. He brought up a supposed lifestyle shift that Dana had adjusted to during the marriage. Her expectations, he argued, had been elevated by the knowledge of Mark's investments. Your Honor, Daniel said calmly, we'd like to submit Exhibit B, a sworn affidavit from Mr. Benjamin Langley, a former spouse of Ms. Walker, outlining a nearly identical pattern of financial exploitation in her previous marriage.
There was a pause. Dana's expression tightened. Riley blinked. Your Honor, we object to the relevance. But the judge, a no-nonsense woman named Judge Whitaker, leaned forward. We'll allow it. For context. The document laid it all out.
Dana had done this before, filed for divorce the moment financial gain appeared possible, made claims of hidden wealth, and attempted to seize assets she had no role in building.
And lost. Now she was trying again. Dana's face went pale.
She hadn't expected Ben to reappear, let alone side with me. After the hearing, she stormed out without saying a word. Riley looked frustrated.
And I?
I felt nothing but quiet resolve.
That night, I got a voicemail from Dana.
Her voice was sharp, almost panicked.
So you're digging through my past now? That's how low you've sunk? This is so beneath you, Mark. I can't believe I ever thought you were different. I didn't reply.
Because the truth was, I hadn't dug.
I hadn't schemed. I just waited. When you live a quiet life, people mistake you for weak.
They confuse silence with submission. Dana had assumed that because I didn't flaunt my wealth, I didn't know how to protect it. But the truth is, I'd been building a fortress from the day I earned my first 6 figures.
She hadn't just underestimated me. She'd underestimated what patience looks like when it's prepared.
In the weeks that followed, I got calls from mutual acquaintances, some curious, some passive-aggressively supportive.
She seemed so nice. Are you sure she's not just hurt? She's saying you hid millions from her. I didn't correct anyone. I didn't owe them my truth. I'd let the facts do the work. Dana, however, began spiraling publicly.
Her social media, once all calm sunsets and motivational quotes, turned chaotic.
Cryptic posts. Pity-driven captions. Even a few thinly veiled jabs. When someone builds a kingdom but never lets you in, what was the point of marrying the king? People started asking questions.
The sympathy that had initially leaned in her direction now hovered, uncertain.
And then came the tipping point.
A former co-worker of Dana's from her marketing job, Monica Patel, messaged me privately. She'd seen the posts, heard the rumors, and felt compelled to share something.
I never wanted to get involved, she wrote. But I saw something a while back you should know.
She attached screenshots.
Internal emails between Dana and a man named Eli Carson, a corporate attorney based in Atlanta.
The messages were personal, suggestive, and dated several months before Dana filed for divorce.
In one, Dana wrote, I wish Mark was more like you. So focused, driven, open. He's too quiet, it's like I'm married to a puzzle I can't solve. But once this is over, I think we'll both be in a better place. Another message. He won't know what hit him. He's so reserved, he won't see it coming. The arrogance was staggering. And the confirmation of emotional infidelity, even if not physical, was undeniable. Monica ended her message with a simple line.
She always said she knew how to play quiet men.
I think she misread you. I stared at the screen for a long while. Then I called Daniel.
The courtroom felt colder that day. Maybe it was the weather, gray skies hanging over Charleston like a wet cloth, or maybe it was the way Dana walked in without the same shine in her eyes. Her hair was tied back tight, her blazer stiff, her lips pressed into a thin, practiced smile. The confidence she had at the start of this process had drained away, replaced by the stubborn dignity of someone who knew the truth was catching up. Daniel and I were already seated, prepared for the final hearing. This wasn't the end of our lives, but it was the end of her illusion. We didn't need to go on the attack. We just needed to hold the line. Judge Whitaker entered, reviewed the filings quietly, then looked at both attorneys. "Ms. Walker, Mr. Davis," she began, "this case presents a unique situation. One where perception and reality seem to have diverged significantly." She flipped a page. "On one side, we have a petitioner who claims she was blindsided, financially misled during the course of her marriage. On the other, we have a respondent whose disclosures are clean, complete, and legally sound. The court has reviewed all documents submitted by both parties, including supplemental evidence from third-party witnesses." She paused. Dana squirmed slightly. The judge continued, eyes now focused squarely on her. "It appears, Ms. Walker, that you initiated this divorce under the assumption that Mr. Davis possessed assets beyond those disclosed. However, you have provided no legal evidence of concealment or fraud. In fact, evidence submitted suggests a pattern of behavior from your prior marriage that reflects a similar trajectory." Dana's lawyer tried to speak, but Whitaker raised a hand. "Furthermore, emails introduced into evidence, though personal and uncomfortable, support the respondent's position that this divorce was premeditated for potential financial gain. As such, this court finds no grounds for spousal support, and no entitlement to any claimed assets." Dana's lips parted, a breath escaping. Just a faint sound, like the start of a protest, but she caught herself. Judge Whitaker turned toward me. "Mr. Davis, this court recognizes the restraint with which you've responded throughout this process. It's rare. Admirable." I nodded. I wasn't interested in revenge. Just closure. And I got it. Outside the courthouse, the wind picked up. Daniel clapped me on the back. "You played it perfectly." "I didn't play," I said. "I just waited." He smiled. "That's why it worked." I didn't see Dana as I left. She must have gone out the side exit. Or maybe she just couldn't face the aftermath. I wouldn't blame her. But later that evening, a final message came through. "Dana, I hope you're happy. I made mistakes. But so did you." I didn't respond. Because I was happy. And her mistakes weren't mine to carry. In the weeks that followed, life went on, but better. The story of the divorce spread through some circles, sure. I could feel the subtle curiosity in glances from acquaintances. But it didn't matter. Those who mattered already knew the truth. And those who didn't? They weren't worth explaining it to. I spent more time at home, started planning a solo trip overseas, something I'd always put off. I reconnected with a few old friends. I even began seeing someone again and quietly, without expectation. Her name was Leah, and she never asked what I did for a living during the first month. That was a good sign. One night, sitting out on the porch with a glass of bourbon, I found myself thinking back to the moment Dana first saw that tax document on my laptop. That flicker of greed behind her eyes, hidden behind a sweet smile. It was the start of her unraveling. She had built a strategy on assumptions. I had built my life on discipline. In the end, the difference made all the difference. Months later, I heard through mutual contacts that Dana had left town. No big announcement. Just packed up and moved to Atlanta, probably chasing something new. There was talk she tried to sue another company for wrongful termination. It didn't stick. Eventually, people stopped talking about her altogether. And me? I kept living. Quietly. Freely. Unapologetically. Because the lesson was simple: when someone tries to take everything from you out of greed, the worst thing you can do is win with grace. That way, they have to live with the fact that you didn't just survive. You thrived. Thank you for watching the video. Like it if you watched the video to the end, and don't forget to subscribe. Have a nice day.